Hello and welcome to today's event. My name is Brenda Holt and I'm the Associate State Director of Community Outreach for the Arizona State Office of AARP. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence and nearly 38 million members across the nation and over 900,000 right here in Arizona, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to families, such as health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. During the month of September, we will be focusing on thriving in the job market, where we will showcase AARP's relevance as a wise friend and a fierce defender, helping workers find a job while fighting on their behalf against ageism. We will provide tips, advice, and resources to help you stay competitive in today's job market and to mitigate the impact that the coronavirus pandemic has had on employment and income. Navigating today's ever-changing job market can be tough, but we're here to help you through it. Please visit us at aarp.org/work for tips, tools, and resources on how to stay competitive in the job market. You can also visit us at aarp.org/AZ to find out other activities and events that are being provided by the Arizona State Office. Again, we'd like to thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy this event.
Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary folk, welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello, everyone. Good evening. I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. Have we got a great show for you tonight? Oh my gosh, just you wait to see what all's going to happen. So I want to welcome all of you. I know some of you are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and even a couple of you are watching on Twitch. I'm happy to say, well, I'll wait till I actually see the results, but today we are live for the first time on Twitter. So that should be interesting. Not quite sure what that's going to look like, but I will find that out very soon. So thank you all so much for being here. So, today we need to celebrate a wide variety of things. So right here in Arizona, back in 1929, the Arizona State Board of Barbers gave its first exam to more than 100 applicants for barber and cosmetology licensing. So you can only imagine Rose Mofford must have been very happy on that day because she was famous for that high head of hair. And finally, there were licensed folks who could do it for her. Now, it is also National Love People Day, which just says, understanding that we're all going through a roller coaster of life with celebrations and its trials and tribulations. So, just love everybody. It is also Thunderbird Day. On this date back in 1965, that classic large marionette series aired live in the UK aired for the first time in the UK. It is also National Chewing Gum Day. Whether you use it as a way to get your jaw working, freshen your breath, people for thousands of years have been chewing on a variety of things from wax to chewing gum and all kinds of sap and things like that. Now, also, I guess to go along with kind of that cosmetology, it is also National Mud Pack Day. People have been using mud as a therapeutic beauty treatment for thousands of years. So spas across the country must be celebrating with getting your hair done and a mud pack and maybe even some cucumbers on your eyes. So what can you expect today? Well, we have a little bit of trivia coming up in just a little bit with a great guest. We also do Little Arizona. We have some Arizona music history. We have a beverage and a little bit of show and tell. And so we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. Now, if this is your first time watching, you might be wondering, who is that man on my screen? Well, my name is Marshall Shore. I came to Arizona a little over 21 years ago from Brooklyn. I was working in this Carnegie Library and traded that all for a 1950s library that now is in a beautiful Richard and Bauer building. So, and libraries are now open again, which has been very nice to be able to go in and continue doing research. And actually, that's going to share in just a little bit, but I don't want to give anything away yet. Now, when we first moved, we moved into a little 1956 ranch. Originally, it was oh so many tones of beige. I'm happy to say now it is just 2 seafoam cantaloupe, much simplified. And there's what my kitchen looks like today. All that brand new GE 1956 appliances, that buttercream yellow tile, that in-the-wall oven with no window. So soon when it gets ready to cool down and I can actually bake again, I've got to be careful how hard I shut that door because it will make things fall. Now, as soon as I got here to Arizona, all I kept hearing about how there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true because every time I went somewhere, I came face to face with so many amazing stories, people, and places. And that was one of the things that kind of got me doing exactly what we're doing today. Then there's that post-war boom that I think in a lot of ways made the Arizona that we all know and love today. All those GIs that either stationed here, trained here, or passed through on their way to places across the planet. After the war, so many of them moved back to the place that they had fallen in love with, looking for a different way of life. And they sure did find it right here in the Southwest in Arizona. Now, I'm also known as the hip historian, and so that means I get to play a lot with history. And you know how you have some days where nothing happens, and then suddenly it's like somebody releases the dam and everything happens? That was today. So, if you've gotten your newsletter for AARP, you'll find a little blurb about just what we're doing right now, Arizona History Happy Hour. We also have a tour coming up on Saturday that there are still a few slots left for, and you can find out more information on hiphistorian.com about those tours. And as of today, I'm so excited. We are doing an event on October 16th, and we are going to be able to access the house where one of the most sensationalist crimes in all of Arizona took place, as well as hear from a woman whose family was highly intertwined with Winnie Ruth Judd after she came back to Arizona, as well as before. So that should be really interesting. And we are also going to show the Vintage Marionette movie. So that's going to be a lot of fun. As well as this morning today also fell into place Beyond the Grave. October 30th, Saturday, from 3 to 6, we are going to be doing an event called Beyond the Grave. We already got a tarot card reader. We'll have a few other folks doing things, as well as folks who are going to be portraying folks who are interned to the cemetery. So it'll be a great way to connect with not just Arizona roots, but also your own roots. So that's why the tag for this is honoring our ancestors. Also, Strange Gardens at the Dismal Gardens is going to be coming up on October 23rd and 24th. Those are both family nights. I will be out there sharing some Arizona haunting stories. And then we also have coming up in November through sponsorship through the air with the Phoenix Office of Arts and Culture, we are going to be doing LGBTQ storytelling virtual. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And also, we are starting a new project called Deep Arizona, where my friend Cece and I are starting to explore Arizona, both near and far. So hopefully next week, had a little bit of a glitch tonight, but next week we'll be able to show you a little bit of a teaser for a road trip we made all the way to Mesa. Oh, I see our guest finally woke up a bit. Okay, I didn't mean to wake you up, Vic. Sorry. Also, I will be hopefully early next month be able to say that I am maybe more than just an Emmy nominee. So we shall find out. I'm still trying to find a date when they're actually going to be doing the virtual event, but they're not sharing it with me. I don't know if they don't want me to attend. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. So more information on that as I learn it as well. Now, also, I see some of you have found the chat on the side of the screen. You can also, if say you remember something, you can also reach out to me through Facebook, Instagram, email as a way to share some of your stories, because honestly, that's where I get my best stuff. Is it gives me information to go research and go play around with and find more to the story. And that's always the fun, is finding that little bit extra. So I will ask if you're on Facebook, if you wouldn't mind on clicking that share button, because tonight we're going to have some really good stories. I don't want to say happy stories, but they are indeed important to Arizona. Now, we always do a little bit of Arizona. You know, I talk a good game about from New York, but I really grew up in a small Midwest town in Indiana, a little farming community. And so that gives me this unique, I think, affinity for small towns. And so today we're going to talk about Happy Jack. It has a population really just under 600 folks. It's over in Coconino County, was originally founded in the late 40s as a logging camp. About 30 years after that, it closed. And then they requested that it relocates. But originally the town of Happy Jack was known as Onion Flat and may have even been called Yellow Jacket. Although since there were so many other places also called Yellow Jacket, they needed a new name. Now, Happy Jack may have gotten its name from a cheerful local lumberman, as you can imagine. Or there is also the possibility that it came from a thief back in Wyoming that was known as Happy Jack. So he was out there committing crimes, I guess, and being quite joyful while doing it. So this is indeed the post office that they did relocate to the new town site. Now, one of the things I love about Happy Jack is they also have the Lowell Discovery Telescope, which is one of the largest telescopes in the entire country. It's part of the whole NAU kind of sphere of telescopes. And I think this is so cool that I've actually got a friend who retired a couple of years ago, moved up to Happy Jack, which I have not made it up there yet, but I need to make it up there so I can go see. Actually, we were up there years ago, went up chasing the bugle, which is when you would go hear the bull elk in mating season. And that was a hoot and a half. No, Anita, I don't think it was named after the Who song. I think it was a little before that happened. Now, we always have a beverage, and today is no exception. So it's a little, let's see. So tonight we are enjoying a Four Peaks Pumpkin Porter. Now, this is a little bit because, everything right now is all about pumpkin spice. So we're getting kind of into the October spirit a little early. So that's why we thought it was appropriate to break this out. Also, Four Peaks is going to be the last guest of the month, talking about some of the stuff they have going on in their own building. Now, often PJ actually likes to test me and see what I can do. And I've been really bad lately about pouring anything that has carbonation. So let's see if I do any better. Last time I did this, it was literally like a half a glass. Oh, I think I'm actually doing quite well with this one. It's not mostly foam. And I got it all in the glass on the first try. Look at that delicious pumpkin porter from Four Peaks. All right, so cheers, everyone. Oh, and that's quite delightful. So, PJ, thank you as always for an amazing recommendation on a beverage. And now I am happy to say we have a very special guest on. Now, we might want to be very quiet because he may have fallen asleep. So, I think we'll try and wake him up. All right. Oh my gosh. And you are not asleep, but you have such a smile. You've got a facelift while we were chatting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you want to know, I'm going to tell you right off at the very beginning, I'm quite upset and I'm thinking of leaving. I just want you to know that. So you invite me to come on your program. That's correct. And then you proceed to open a bottle of pumpkin porter for yourself and don't even offer any to your guest. It just so happens that pumpkin is the spice of my life, and Four Peaks makes a terrific pumpkin porter. So actually, I'm going to just run out now, and I will be back. I'm going to get my pumpkin porter because you didn't offer it to me. So carry on.
So I've not had it before. It's really quite tasty.
Yes, I'm not a big beer fan, but anything that's got pumpkin on it tends to draw my attention. And they might as well just do it all year round.
Well, see, it's so funny that it's like pumpkin spice has become this thing that's supposed to harbor in fall, but they're like now doing it like in the middle of summer. They start breaking out the pumpkin spice.
Well, if you actually think about it, pumpkin has virtually no taste to it at all. It's those additives. So you don't even need pumpkin. I put it on, there's a pumpkin butter that goes really well on bread.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
Yeah. Oh, which of those upscale groceries sells that? Anyway, but they only release it for a month or two around fall, which means
so you got to go buy it as much as you can, so that way you can have it all year round.
That's everything that goes into pumpkin spice. I know there's people that hate that hate pumpkin and. See,
and so that's actually my dad. My dad cannot stand cinnamon. So I grew up with pumpkin pie that was bright orange. Because it didn't have much in it, and it was more like a pumpkin custard, which was really good.
Cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, those are all the best spices in the world. So, but I just want you to know that maybe you ought to think a little bit more about your guests in the future, and if you're going to feature something like that, you might just want to offer it to a guest. All I have is a bottle here of vodka. I put it in a water bottle.
I'm like, you're going to try and pass it off as water. I know you well enough.
Well, what do you think vodka is made from? Oops, where is it? It's over here.
I know that's always the battle. It's like, well, okay, where's the camera? Where's the camera?
Yeah.
All right, Vic. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, most of the time I'm on a work release program, so I don't know what time you get done tonight, but they've let me stay out a little bit later, and hopefully I can get back without being penalized. Uh, there's not a lot to tell about me. Like you, I'm from the Midwest originally. It's been very hard to change the "yeah, you betcha for sure, don't you know." I'm in the heart of that country, Minnesota, Minneapolis.
Indeed.
But I have been out here most of my life, so not around long enough to be considered a native, but pretty close to being a native. And like you, I've gotten interested in history. When I was young, actually, I wanted to be a theoretical astrophysicist. I thought astronomy and trying to figure out how our universe started, all of that sort of thing would be terrific. And I actually got a number of people through basic astronomy classes at the University of Minnesota. When I was 13, I lectured at a night lab there.
Wow.
But when it came to math, I had trouble with 2 + 2 and that sort of thing. So the best I can say today is I am really a theoretical astrophysicist. And so that's my main thing. And I realized that maybe it was easier to dig into the past than try to get towards the future. So I've been involved with historic things for many years, and the hair is prematurely gray, but I begin to think about things like preservation from a personal standpoint, and that seems to be the focus of my life today.
And you've done some great things and preserving some really cool spaces.
Well, I haven't.
The Mass Preservation Foundation as a team has
Yes.
done some really incredible things.
Yep. It's an interesting organization. It's a nonprofit group, 501c3, and we shamelessly ask for money because otherwise we're not able to do anything. We started to form in 2010 when the future of the Buckhorn Baths was in jeopardy. I think that most people know about the Buckhorn. And Alice Sliger, who was in her 103rd year, was really concerned what might happen after her passing. So a group of us got together and said, well, maybe we can help her out when she does pass away. But the best way to do it is with a nonprofit foundation. So we started to put that together in 2010, and I think we began meeting over the summer. But there was a memorable meeting on a very strange October day. We were sitting in a little coffee house in downtown Mesa, and the skies were getting darker and darker and more threatening until a huge storm passed over our heads. And we thought, wow, we haven't seen one like this in a long time. And the next day I was going to lunch with a friend, and we were going out East Mesa somewhere, and we're driving down Main Street and happened to go by the Starlight Motel. And he said to me, something's different about the motel. And I'm zooming along at 60 miles an hour, so I didn't notice it. And I said, well, after lunch, we'll go back and take a look. And so we did that. And as we were approaching it from the east, heading west, I realized that something definitely was missing. And it was about a 60, 70-foot pole that had figures on it, animated diving lady, and the motel sign. And I wondered, well, what happened to that? And so we pulled into the driveway, and there it was laying on the ground. The motel had been hit by a microburst from that storm we experienced the previous day. And that really got me concerned. We had not formed our corporation yet, but I knew that if we didn't get involved right away, that it was likely that the diving lady probably would disappear for good. The motel owner only had about $10,000 insurance, and it was in the way in the driveway, and he was calling around to see who would give him a few $100 for the scrap value and haul it off for him. So I started contacting some media friends, and then it took off. It was first in the papers, and then television came along, and interest in it just absolutely exploded. So we worked with the owner to see what we could do to put this thing back together, and it was in terrible shape, not only from the fall, but just deterioration over 50 years of its life.
Right.
And so he literally turned it over to us. We became the owners. That gave us all the ability that we needed to work through with the city for permitting and things like that. And so I naively thought, well, we can get this thing squared away in 33 months, maybe. It shouldn't take very long, and maybe $60,000. Well, it was a little over 3 years, about 3.5 years that it took, and it was about $125,000 to get this thing restored. But it proved to be an absolute catalyst for generating interest in neon in the valley. When we were rededicating it after it was installed, we thought we'd be very happy if 150 people would come, 100 people. That would be terrific. And we got the mayor to come out and give a little speech and flip a switch. And his staff told him, it's not going to be a big deal. You go out there, give your 2-minute talk, and you can go home for dinner. Well, much to everybody's surprise, we are told, and you were there.
Indeed.
And you may have a better number than we do, but we were told that upwards of 1,000 people came to see this sign lit up again. They were in a Kmart parking lot a quarter of a block away. They were in the median of Main Street. They were across the street. They were on the hotel property. They were on the sidewalk. It was absolutely incredible. All the television stations were out there. And so the diving lady turned out to be the best thing to get our organization going. And we developed a great relationship with the city, and now are working very closely to put on public display orphan signs that we have collected from locally and from the valley. We've got over 15 now, and we're close to establishing a location in which they can be reinstalled, and then we'll be moving forward. But things like Bill Johnson's Big Apple, not the Phoenix sign, but the one that was in Mesa, and it's identical except for a little smaller in size. One that we're really happy to get, although it's going to take a lot of work. Folks may remember the Watson's Flower sign that was on the Mesa Tempe line, right at the canal,
right,
Boulevard, and that one at the base of the poles, which sat in a little garden and got watered constantly, rusted out, and the sign eventually just leaned back against the building. The poles leaned back, and then the sign really wasn't hurt, but it was suffering from age too. And the owners had it taken down and laid on a steel pallet because it was two-sided, so it needed to be elevated. And then finally donated it to us. So we've got it. And so we'll, as soon as we know where we want to install these signs, we'll begin to have a campaign, maybe adopt a sign, your favorite sign, to help.
Oh, nice.
One of the others is, and it may be the oldest in the valley, is a porcelain enamel Dairy Queen sign. It wasn't made locally. It was made back in Minneapolis for the corporation. But the porcelain signs are from the mid-50s or earlier. And when it was taken down, just a year and a half or so ago. It was in working condition. So all we've got to do is just kind of clean it up and make sure it meets codes and get it back up and running. That's the short answer.
So I'm typing right now the name of the organization because a couple folks have asked, what's the organization? So it is
the Mesa Preservation Foundation. And it's on the web at mesapreservation.org. And we're not as expansive as you are. We only have a Facebook page, Mesa Preservation, but that's the place to go to for all of the updates. That's where we communicate with folks more than on the website.
Right. And you guys do some great stuff. So thank you for all the work you do. And so that kind of leads us into why we're here tonight.
Why?
Because, well, we have some trivia coming up.
We do?
We do. I know.
Oh, my goodness. Am I going to have to answer these?
Well, luckily it's multiple choice. So even if you don't know the answer,
I can guess.
It's listed there. Right, exactly. So it's one of those answers. So you can just throw a dart at it and it'll either break your computer screen or pick the right answer. There you go.
Remember, I have been assessed several times and diagnosed as being congenitally stupid. And I was told I'm not even bright for a dumb guy. So just keep that in mind when you go through these trivia questions.
But you've got such a great face for radio.
Thank you. That was part of my career early in life. And actually it was kind of funny. People see faces much more than they did years ago. And I would go out and do a remote somewhere, and while you're talking on the air, people are coming up to you very close, and you're trying to do your radio shtick, and they're just in your face looking at you. And then when you're off the air, they say things like, "Gee, you just don't look like you sound." And I go, "Well, who did you expect?" "Oh, Cary Grant," or something like that. And so I stopped doing remotes after all, because it was just too hard on my ego.
on your delicate ego.
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. So we have come up with some great trivia questions for you tonight. And so they are multiple choice. So that way Vic can just choose one of those answers and tell us why that's the right answer.
Well, that's a big onus.
I didn't say it was it's going to be the right answer at that moment. So there's some leeway sometimes.
Actually, before you do that, you might want to explain where these trivia questions are coming from.
So you were putting together a presentation kind of talking about the dark side of Arizona history that not a lot of people focus on.
Right.
So kind of getting ready people. So you're kind of like the pumpkin spice latte, because here we are at the end of September, getting ready for October, telling some of those stories.
Yeah, no,
it's we're preempting that.
It's more like garlic. It's not sweet like a pumpkin latte.
Oh, okay. So I know you're putting together a presentation, and so this kind of came out of that. Right. Talking about some of the nefarious things in Arizona's past.
Yep. It's the presentation is called Bullets and Bedlam, and it's going to debut for lifelong learning group at Mesa Community College. We've been doing presentations there for years.
Oh,
by
nice.
the way, congratulations. You're also doing humanities console presentations this go around. Is that correct?
Indeed, I am.
And your subject is?
So I'm doing several. So one is LGBTQ history of Arizona. We are doing one on Arizona music history.
Great.
So I just booked my first one down in Casa Grande.
Well, I'm coming for an encore with ghost towns. So
fun.
we did that a couple of years ago, and you can always expand and change that. For some reason, I think there was trepidation about getting their feet wet with bullets in bedlam without seeing it. So this time around, it'll just be the ghost towns. But I think the bullets in bedlam presentation will find other places in which to.
I'm sure it will. So, because again, those stories are important to Arizona, just like all the other stories.
Right. And they put things into a little bit different context. Arizona has found itself on the map too many times for unpleasant events that have taken place in this state. And it goes back to our earliest settlement days, and that's what the presentation is all about. It starts at the beginning and comes up to the present day.
Indeed. All right. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and launch into some trivia. All right. So you can keep tab in the chat. You can keep tabs wherever people have done it, on their arm, on their leg. You can do it on a piece of cake with a chocolate syrup. Whatever makes you happy, you go. All right. So first question. Who was the only woman to be hung in Arizona?
Boy, that sure is a nice nice start, isn't it? Couldn't think of anything better to go with than hangings were not just for men. Women who committed certain crimes were very much entitled to be executed by the rope as men were. But
indeed. And so basically your choices are Annie Oakley, A, B, Winnie Ruth Judd, C, Eva Dugan, or D, Belgian Jenny Botters. All right. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the questions and answers. Then we'll take a little bit of an Arizona music break, and then we'll launch into all the stories behind those answers. So just you wait, everybody, and you can find out who the only woman to be hung in Arizona really is. All right. So question 2. With the horrific end to Eva Dugan's hanging, many thought it was inhumane form of execution. What was it replaced with? A, an electric chair. B, a firing squad. C, a guillotine. Or D, a gas chamber. So what other form of execution was then implemented? All right. Well, you're choosing one of those options. Question 3. The most famous gunfight in all of Arizona history took place at the OK Corral in Tombstone. But like most myths or Hollywood movies, it's not true. Where was the gunfight, but not at the OK Corral? So was it A, Allen Street, B, an open field behind the OK Corral, C, near Boot Hill to make burials easier, or D, near Tombstone's famous rose tree? So where did that gunfight that Hollywood has made oh so famous actually take place? Question 4. One of the toughest, hardworking women in Arizona was described as a bullwhacker who drove freight wagons pulled by oxen and mules the way a man did, by filling their ears with curses and cracking a whip over their heads. How was this remarkable lady known? Was it A, Arizona Mary, B, Bullwhacker Betty, C, Cursing Katie, or D, Tough as Nails Tanya? So which one of those ladies had all those accolades? All right. Question 5. Here we are at that camel hump. Question 5. Arizona had one woman holding up a stagecoach. Who was she? A. Big Nose Kate. B. Bonnie Parker. C. Belle Starr. Or D. Pearl Hart, the Lady Bandit. So which one of those women was holding up stagecoaches? All right. Question 6. Arizona took headlines in 1996 with its first mass murder in state history. Where did it occur? Was it A. Phoenix, B. Tucson, C. Mesa, or D. Flagstaff? So where did that horrific first mass murder take place? Question 7. Who was the violently murdered Arizona Republic investigative reporter? Was it A. Ralph Cramden, B. Ed Lazar, C. Don Bowles, or D. John Harvey Adamson? So which one of those was a Arizona Republic investigative reporter who was murdered right here in Phoenix? All right, question 8. A popular TV series star was in Scottsdale performing at the Old Windmill Theater. He wound up being brutally murdered in his Scottsdale apartment. Who was he? Was it A. Dennis Weaver, B. Robert Conrad, C. Jack Lord, or D. Bob Crane? So what popular TV series star didn't make it out of Scottsdale? All right, moving on to 9 as we're coming down that slope. All right, for question 9, for 2 decades, Robert Fisher has eluded law enforcement authorities, resulting in his placement on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. What crime did he commit? A. Killed and robbed 3 tourists. B. Brutally killed his wife, 2 children, and then set a violent explosion at his Scottsdale home to cover up the evidence. C. In Tucson, he killed customers and bank staff. Or D. He was Arizona's most vicious serial killer. All right, so what crime did Robert Fisher commit that got him on the top 10 most wanted list from the FBI? In every post office, probably even in the Happy Jack post office, they have his face, even though they had to move the post office. All right, and question 10. I think Vic threw this in for my for me, because
Absolutely.
all right, so Winnie Ruth Judd avoided the death penalty and was sent to the state hospital for the insane. Often with help of others, she managed to escape. How many times did she break out of the hospital? Was it A, 3, B, 5, C, 7, or D, 9? How many times did Winnie Ruth Judd break out of the state mental hospital? All right, so while you are contemplating all those answers, we are going to talk about a little band from Mesa called Jimmy Eats World. Now, they formed in 1993 in Mesa, and initially they got the name from one of the members of the band and a younger brother who were having a kind of a fight, and so there was a drawing made with the title Jimmy Eats World. And so that's where the name came from. They started off really as a punk band. They have recorded 10 albums at the moment. In 2020, like so much of the world, they decided to do a virtual concert called Phoenix Sessions. And last year, they actually did Lollapalooza in Chicago. So as the world is opening up, so is Jimmy Eats World. All right. And there's some of their albums. And all right, who's ready for some answers? And I love the fact that we have people from Minnesota, we have people from Iowa watching. So we are getting a whole kind of a national swath of folks, not just Arizona. All right. So who was the only woman to be hung in Arizona? Eva Dugan, C.
And there's there is something else to that question too, that makes it particularly important to chronicle in Arizona history. First, some people will say that Dolores Moore, back in 1865, was the first woman hung in Arizona, but actually she was acquitted. So she was never hung. So that was left to Eva Dugan. And Eva was an interesting gal. If you see photographs of her, and we have them in the presentation, a matronly woman in her late 40s, sort of looks like your mother. But her crime was particularly harsh, and that's why she was sentenced to hang. And that took a jury a lot of guts to be able to sentence a woman to hang. And that was back in that day, a judge could not overturn the sentence by a jury, nor could the governor. So, but Eva was pretty stoic. She knew what she had done, and she walked the 13 stairs to the scaffold, and she asked the guards not to hold her hands. She wanted to look strong as she went up there, and she shook everybody's hand, and they put the black hood over her and released her. This is where you might want to tune out for a second or two, because apparently the hangman, there is a science to hanging people in terms of the drop, the weight of the individual, and the size of the noose. But to make the story short, the trapdoor opened and Eva Dugan fell through. And because of the misalignment of the rope and her weight, it snapped her head off, which hung in the noose just briefly, then fell to the ground and rolled right in front of the spectators. And for this execution, there were 4 women, and 3 of them fainted.
Wow. And so that brings us to question 2. So with that horrific end, what replaced hanging?
That was the gas chamber, and it became official in 1935, but the first execution with a gas chamber was in 1934. First one in the country was in Las Vegas just a decade earlier. But people began to feel after the Eva Dugan debacle that maybe we would have a more humane way of executing a prisoner. And so we became one of the last states to use the hangman's noose, and went to the gas chamber, which had its own issues.
Indeed. All right. So question 3, the most famous gunfight in Arizona that didn't take place in Tombstone, but not at the OK Corral, really took place
in an open field behind the OK Corral. Maybe one of the trivia questions should have been, how long was this infamous gunfight? I think we do. We didn't ask that, did we? We did
not. So
okay, just so people can have it in their heads. while we're talking about it. How long did this gunfight last? Was it 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, 9 minutes? And we'll get to that in just a second. The gunfight at the OK Corral is one of those experiences that has become more myth than reality. Hollywood has gone out of its way to glorify gunfights, and very few people were really good marksmen, and the way they wore their guns was in such a way that you really didn't have quick draws and things of that sort. In fact, gunfights often were based on the historic duel, where people literally aimed guns at each other and then fired, rather than the quick draw of Hollywood. But it did start at the OK Corral because some of the antagonists in this story were getting ready to leave, and the Earps and Doc Holliday came by, and there was an attempt to confiscate some guns, which was illegal in Tombstone, and that's kind of started the anger and yelling that took place. But in the end, they ran out to get away from the OK Corral into an open field behind the corral. And the gunfight lasted all of 30 seconds. And I don't believe there's any Hollywood movie that portrays that gunfight in just 30 seconds.
No, that's just the intro music to the gunfight is 30 seconds.
Yes, and it's that long. And the image, if you want to put that back up, Marshall, this was a very famous postcard. The three that were killed were Tom McLaury and his brother Frank, along with Billy Clanton. And this is one of the only pictures of Billy Clanton. It's after his death, of course. They dressed him up and put him in these fancy coffins. This is a Fraser postcard that was sold in the 30s and 40s. If you go to Tombstone today and other places, you can still find and purchase this card. It was very common for the big bad guys to be memorialized, I guess, and celebrated after their death. And so they put them in these fancy boxes, and they all wound up in Boot Hill.
Were you going to still go visit them today?
Correct.
All right. So one of the toughest, hardworking women in Arizona was described as a bullwhacker who drove freight wagons pulled by oxen and mules the way a man did, by filling their ears with curses and the cracking of a whip over their heads. And who was she?
Well, we don't know her last name, ironically, but she was known as Arizona Mary. And as a matter of fact, if you do a little bit of digging, there is a piece of sheet music that celebrates Arizona Mary. There weren't a lot of jobs for women. Women did come out west, but they were either left to menial jobs. Some were able to take on the same type of work as a man, and Arizona Mary was one of those. And there is a great photograph. What you saw in that illustration is a blow up, and in the presentation we use Ken Burns effects. So in the presentation of Bullets in Bedlam, it'll pull out, and you'll see that she's leading about 24 oxen, and that
wow.
is really hard work. And she had really a good reputation, but yet who she was is lost to history. We only know what her accomplishments were.
And so many women, that's the case. We don't have much more than a first name.
Right.
In some cases, not even that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So who was the one woman we had here in Arizona holding up a stagecoach?
Well, that's Pearl Hart, and she was known as the Lady Bandit. Pearl Hart has an interesting history. She was from Canada, and she married a gambler and a rather unpleasant fellow when she was a teenager. and she was abused by him pretty bad. And she tried to escape, but it's one of those typical stories where the abuser says, "I'm sorry, I will never do this again. I really love you." And she went back. Don't drink that while I'm doing that. I mean, my goodness.
I'm just teasing you.
Yeah, who's going to close
Tantalizing
out
you.
the show? So she tried to escape from him. Eventually, she did separate. And while she was in Globe, Arizona, she got notice that her mother was dying in Canada, and she didn't have enough money to go back. And she had a good friend of hers, and he had no money to loan her. And they were trying to figure out how she could get money. And he said, "Well, probably the only thing you can do is rob a stagecoach." And she was really concerned because she really had no criminal history. But they decided to do it, and they were armed and all of that. But there was no intention to kill anybody. And they got something like $3,000 in the currency of the time. Nobody was hurt, and she made comments like, "I don't know why men have guns, because they're too scared to use them." And it was a really fascinating story. She did get sentenced to serve time in the Yuma prison, but she had a very good relationship with the warden of the prison, and they may even had some relationships. She wasn't there very long. She had special considerations given to her, a much better cell than the male prisoners had. And finally, after her sentence was served, went to Kansas City, and she did travel a little bit with Wild Bill's Western show,
Okay.
and relayed the story. But she did die in Arizona. She had married someone else and settled down, and most people had forgotten her history by then.
All right. So, question 6. Arizona took headlines in 1996 with its first mass murder in the entire state, which occurred
In Mesa, of course. I shouldn't say that.
I was going to say, no.
No, it just happened. Ever since the Columbine High School massacre in 1999, mass murders have become a tragic way of life in the country. But they really began decades earlier. In 1996, the nation mourned the killings of nurses and medical people in a Chicago hospital. And in the same year, there was a shooting from a clock tower at the University of Austin. And these dominated headlines for most of the year. And it had a very profound effect on a young boy by the name of Robert Benjamin Smith. And he mulled this over and over in his head until he decided that a way for him to make a name for himself, like the others in those mass murders, was to commit his own. And he wanted to kill 40 people. And he started out at his school. He was going to kill all the teachers, and then he decided against that. But he took a fancy to the Rosemar School of Beauty, which was on Stapley, just north of Mesa Drive. In fact, the building is still there today. And usually on Saturday morning, a lot of people were coming and going because they were getting ready for date night and things of that sort. So he was armed to the teeth, and he had some other things with him. His original intent was to put plastic bags, lunch bags, over everybody's head and let them smother. He thought that would be interesting for him to watch. And so he brought those with him, but they were too small. So that's when he pulled out a gun, laid everybody out in a circle with their heads at the center, and proceeded to kill them all. including a 3-year-old child that a mother had brought with her at the while she was getting her hair cut. And he was very casual about it. Someone who worked there came in a little bit late, saw what was going on, called the police. They came right away. And when he had done his deed, Robert Benjamin Smith was walking out the front door and the police were there. And he was tickled pink to be arrested. He told the police at the time, "I did this just because I wanted to make a name for myself." And even as he was being taken away in a police car, driven down the street, he was holding his hands up with the handcuffs to show people that he was under arrest. He's still alive today. He's about 74, I think. And he's in the prison in Eloy and is never likely to get out.
Now, Sarah says that her parents knew one of the folks that were killed in that event.
One of the things we try to do in this presentation is not celebrate the killers. They do get the attention, but I make it a point to make sure that people remember those who lost their lives in senseless crimes, such as that committed by Smith.
Right. And then Anita asked, what about the Buddhist monks back in the early 90s?
We talk about that in the presentation, and the reason for that killing was not the same as Robert Benjamin Smith's. He wanted to be famous, but a fellow by the name of Duty and an accomplice wanted to rob, get some money or some goods they could sell off or something of that sort. And they knew that this Buddhist temple out in Whitman was a quiet place, and that's the reason they went there. But when they got there, they did an execution much like Robert Benjamin Smith. They laid everybody out together and systematically executed all of them. The sad thing is, and there are photographs of that, where they're all holding their hands. And Duty is another one who's serving multiple life terms and probably will never get out.
Right. All right. Question 7. Who was the violently murdered Arizona Republic investigative reporter?
Well, that of course was Don Bowles. That was kind of I don't mean to say that as a throwaway question, but you have to be a newcomer to Arizona to not know the Don Bowles story.
Right.
This is one of the most tragic crimes, something that started in the early 1920s, but it really came in after World War II, is the migration of mobsters to Arizona. Some came just to get away from what was going on in their territories, and didn't do much in the way of criminal activity. Others realized that this was a ripe market. And Don Bowles, when he was hired by the Republic, didn't really want to be an investigative reporter, but that's where they put him. And he was dogged in his in going after these mobsters. And when you do that, you're likely to learn the consequences. And he went to have a meeting at the Clarendon Hotel, where Marshall is quite a bit. And obviously the meeting never took place. There was a phone call for him while he was in the lobby, and that's when a bomb was placed under his car. He left the hotel, got in, started to back out his little Datsun automobile, and it was blown up. John Harvey Adamson was one of those that was involved with that crime, but was even worse. He lived, I think, for 9 or 11 days. And during that time, both legs were amputated, an arm was amputated. It was the most horrific and painful death, not only for Bowles himself, but what his family had to experience. Real tragedy of the high stakes that you can get yourself involved with in trying to cover mobster activities.
Indeed. Okay, so question 8. A popular TV series star was here in Scottsdale performing, and he was brutally murdered in his Scottsdale apartment.
Well, that, of course, was Bob Crane. He was in a controversial but popular television series called Hogan's Heroes, which takes place in a German prisoner of war camp. And he was the lead actor. But after that series, he really wasn't able to do much. He was one show wonder, I guess is what you would call it. So he was spending his time traveling around the country, working in stock theater and out in on Scottsdale Road and Shea Boulevard was the Windmill Theater. And he was hired to do a comedy there and was put up in an apartment nearby. What most people didn't know at the time is that he himself had a very dark side. He had an avid interest in pornography. He made pornographic films. Excuse me. He had that really was a side of him because he was really a lighthearted character in public. But the police were called to the apartment, and when they entered his bedroom, he was laying there in the bed and had been brutally shot. The side of his face was unrecognizable. The irony of that killing is that today nobody's been arrested for it. There is some belief who may have some theories of who may have done the killing, but nothing that's led to an arrest or prosecution. And the reason for it generally is believed because of this pornographic side of his life. Boy, these are really interesting trivia questions. Who wrote those?
Yeah, I know. It's like, wow, they're really good. Wow, you should maybe make a presentation of these.
No, I'm getting depressed. Give me some pumpkin porter and I might be animated again.
Well, next time I'm out in Mesa, we'll go have a pumpkin porter together. How's that?
All right. Okay, that's good.
All right. So, and keeping with the non-cheery questions, for 2 decades, Robert Fisher has eluded law enforcement authorities, resulting in being on the top 10 most wanted list. What was his crime?
Well, his crime was that he brutally killed his wife and his 2 children, and then to cover up the evidence in a unique fashion, blew up his house. And what he did was loosen a gas line into the house and appropriately place a candle, long burning candle, in another part of the house so that it would take several hours for enough gas to build up before the house would explode. And that gave him a chance to get away. He is still a fugitive. And a lot of the wanted posters and features on television have done computer manipulations that try to show what he would look like today. He had medical experience. He had enough experience to know how to live out in the backcountry in the woods. So he could have easily gone into one of the forests in Arizona. And it's not unlike the case with this fellow named Laundrie, who is now evading capture and had killed his fiancée in Grand Teton National Park. And he may be living out in the swamp area, I guess, of Florida.
Right.
But it's a really tragic crime. And this is one that you really want to find. And the law doesn't always move fast, but I think before his time is up, he will be located and brought to justice.
Indeed. All right. So question 10 and our final question of the night. Winnie Ruth Judd avoided the death penalty and was sent to the state hospital. How many times did she wind up escaping from the hospital?
And what would your guess be, Marshall?
I would say 7 times.
See, you're wrong. That's not true. I just put that up to confuse you. No, you know the story. This was a remarkable woman. She was able, within the first couple of months after she first went to the hospital, and by the way, she was sentenced to hang. And you've told that story so many times. I'm sure your viewers probably know it. But fortunately, because of a relationship with the warden at the hospital and with the help of her lawyers, they did an assessment of her. And with a lot of support, she was diagnosed as being criminally insane, which I don't believe is true, but it got her off the hangman's rope. Right. So she was a remarkable person while she was in that state hospital. She didn't, she got along with most people, and she was popular. As we talked earlier, she even gave haircuts and stylings to fashionable women in Phoenix. They would come to the hospital to have their hair cut by Winnie Ruth Judd. But she obviously didn't like it there. And she made very good friends with some of the staff and the leaders of the hospital. And to the best of our knowledge, she was given a key at one point. So she could literally unlock the door, go out. And she wound up escaping 7 times. The last time was 1964. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And that kept her. She managed to get to California. By that time, she was an elderly woman, and she worked in the home of a wealthy woman in San Francisco. And I think it was something like 6 years. Excuse me, after that escape, that she was finally apprehended, brought back to Arizona, and incarcerated again. And with the help of lawyers, help me out. What was the big lawyer from California that she hired?
I tend not to deal directly with the names because I always mess them up. So,
I know his name. And as soon as we're done, it'll come to me. Well-known fellow. In fact, he just passed away, I think, recently. Anyway, was able to convince the parole board and the governor to give her a pardon. And she went back to California and spent the rest of her life there.
So I'm happy to see several folks they already know the next question, which is, how did you do? Now, also, Lane asked a question. She had to step away and take a phone call. And so you can always go back and watch these on Facebook and on YouTube. So they are archived there, so you can find old issues of it or episodes. So that's always a fun thing to do, is go back and see some of those earlier episodes, or being able to re-watch some of them, because there's a lot of nuances in this. I mean, you might want to maybe go back and take a look, because, true crime is so popular right now. I mean, actually, we're going to have someone on next month who is from the Arizona True Crime website talking about true crime in Arizona as well. So,
as you can see, like from that postcard from the OK Corral, true crime has always been popular. Right. You had the dime novels at the turn of the century. And you look at a lot of television programs deal with this subject. And as I said, I get a little bit concerned because sometimes the crime is more sensationalized than the people who were victims and lost their lives. And I don't want to ever lose sight of that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, that's one of the things. It's like really taking care with like the Winnie Ruth Judd story, and even the event we're doing on the 90th is not a celebration, a commemoration, because still at the end of that event, there were 2 young women who lost their lives.
Yes.
That still have not. We don't know the true story of why that happened, or even who did it.
I don't include it in the presentation, and I'm not sure that I would advise it. But if you do go onto the web, you can find coroner photographs of the 2 girls, Agnes Leroy and Samuelson.
Yes.
Were how they were dismembered, and the photographs are extremely graphic.
So yeah, I mean, whenever I talk about it, I never show those images. I show the trunks and leave it at that, because that's more. I mean, you don't need the gruesomeness.
No, you absolutely do not.
It's kind of like a good
prize that it's there.
Right. So Vic, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit of Bedlam, Arizona, and some bullets.
Well, thank you for the invitation. When you write the check, it's 1 N and 2 Fs, as you can see on the screen there, and maybe just a 6-pack of pumpkin porter would be great. No, actually, Marshall, I'm thrilled. This was really really fun, and Marshall and I go way back. We've done neon tours together. So, yeah. And so this is a real honor to join you for this. And I hope I didn't lower the level too much with this.
No, not at all. Trivia. No, because I mean, it's all part of our history. And so, and that's the thing. It's like, it's not just. Oh, he's back to the Botox again. Watch out. So Vic, again, thank you so much. And I will be seeing you with some pumpkin porter in my hand.
All right. I'm writing that down, and you've got a lot of witnesses that have watched this tonight.
That is true. I have a lot of witnesses.
They're going to be on my side.
All right. Have a great rest of your night, and see you soon. All right. So again, Vic, thank you so much. Not necessarily happy topics, but it is a lot of just kind of that foundation of Arizona. So thank you all for sharing how you did. And as you know, it's not how many you got right, but all the stories about Arizona that you may know a little bit about. Now you know a little bit more of the story. So now you'll see why I said, you might want to click on share, because these are stories you're not going to hear everywhere else. So I show and tell. Normally I pull things from my house, but I just did a program out in Goodyear. They are celebrating their 75th anniversary. And I took a drive out there and found some great 40s housing, which I'm not talking about. Maybe I'll talk about it next week, because it was really cool. An entire development still left from 1944. But when I was researching, I kept finding mention of, it's like every once in a while, I would see something about domes. And I didn't know what they meant until suddenly I came across Eskimo Villages for America. And they decided that one of the ways they were going to meet kind of that post-war boom in terms of that housing need was to build these dome houses where they would inflate a balloon, which they had a lot of out in Goodyear because they were making blimps, and then they would spray concrete over that. Sadly, none of these is left, as far as I know. So, I would love it if somebody was able to say, hey, by the way, my grandma lived in one, or I've got one in my backyard, which I would love to see. But then, so the more popular type of housing there actually are still some left of were these kind of a mobile home. Now, it didn't come with wheels. Well, it kind of came with wheels. It was on a truck, and it would be delivered to you, and it would be set down. And some people even call them accordion homes, because the bedrooms would then be pulled out of the house. and then it would be set up landscaped. Now there were at least 80 up to 100 plus in Goodyear. There are now there's one that I'm definitely sure of. When I did the program, and I had a couple of women who said, hey, you know, we think grandma lived in one of these down the street, and it's still there. So now I need to go track that down. And so, so there's the one left that we found that was in the best shape. There was another one on the street, but it's had so many additions onto it. Again, these Wellfoot homes were also from the mid 40s, trying to be affordable housing that was easy to set up and could be readily available. Made a lot of times with spare tools, parts that they would have made for the airplanes that they no longer were making. So they converted some of those into housing. So I had a great time out in Goodyear looking at some really cool houses. We were out there in a brand new complex that, I mean, we're talking, I mean, has a water slide that would make a Las Vegas casino envious. So next week we have ghost hunter and author Deb Branning on as a guest. In fact, I think she might even be watching tonight. So that's going to kind of kick off our October as we're talking about hauntings. And then I know we'll have a little bit of true crime later in the month, and then ending the month with Four Peaks, who they actually do a haunted tour of their facility. So remember, if you ever have any questions, suggestions, things, maybe you know where a dome house is, I would love to know. I wish I had one in my backyard, honestly. So you can always reach out to me. You can reach out on Facebook, Instagram, email. I always love hearing from you all. It's always an amazing adventure. And so I always give a shout out to Chris and Cole, who did that amazing video to start the show off with, as well as cocktail advice from my advisor, PJ. And we're going to send you off tonight with, we are going to do a little bit of, since I was just out in Goodyear, we are going to show a commercial from Goodyear Tire that is very reminiscent of a very popular song right here in Arizona. Well, actually across the country. You might recognize the tune.
What are the hot cars wearing this year? Boots. Wide boots, GT tires from Goodyear.
These boots are made for rolling wherever cars are hot. Wide boots GT from Goodyear. What sports cars need, they've got.
Check the specs. Built low and wide like racing tires. Low cord angle. 4 plies polyester cord. Track tested at 130.
These boots are made for rolling wherever cars are hot. Wide boots GT from Goodyear. What sports cars need, they've got.
If you drive a high-performance car, you need Goodyear's finest high-performance tire.